the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Today, our nation remembers the 22nd anniversary of the September 11 terror attacks with the reading of the names of those killed in the 9/11 attacks at Ground Zero in New York City and observance ceremonies at the Pentagon, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, Alaska, and beyond. But instead of paralyzing the nation, the tragedy of 9/11 inspired Americans to work together as few events in our history have ever done before. We can never forget 9/11. Joining us live this morning is Chief John LaBarbera, a retired battalion chief with the Fire Department of New York City, to share his memories of 9/11. Chief LaBarbera is an executive board member of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. He served the FDNY for over 39 years and our nation as a U.S. Marine for 2.5 years. Chief LaBarbera, thank you so much for joining us this morning here on Morning Air and Relevant Radio. It's an honor to be with you on this anniversary.
Thank you very much for having me. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, Chief LaBarbera, let's go back to that day 22 years ago. What do you remember about the morning of 9/11?
That morning, my assignment in that period of time, I was a captain in Brooklyn, New York, in the Prospect Park area. I was supposed to work the tour, but I made a switch. I went to the gym doing what I do, and somebody told me to look at the monitors. A plane went into the Trade Center. Honestly, I didn't grasp the magnitude of it. I thought it was a small plane, but as I looked at it, the gaping hole was 10 to 15 stories. After the second plane went in, I jumped in my car and I made my way to the Staten Island ferry that connects Staten Island to Lower Manhattan. And my bosses told me to stand fast because we were going to receive injured civilians and firefighters and other first responders. And we waited over a couple of hours and nobody came against orders, which is something I'd never done. A bunch of us jumped on the ferry, took the ferry over to Lower Manhattan. The site was unmanageable, as you can imagine.
You disobeyed orders, but you were answering a higher calling in your heart.
It wasn't, I served in the Marine Corps. It was a very, very difficult decision. I honestly did it because my nephew, a young fireman, jumped on the ferry. And I said, if I don't go with him. When we got there, you could see it on TV, you could hear the sounds, but being there, the two tremendous piles, skeleton that we all see in those photos of the outer shell. I think at that point, most of us knew nobody was coming out of there. There was maybe 16 survivors. The miracle of Stairway B, they did survive from inside the building. We shot those firefighters and civilians. The Tunnel to Towers did that. You could go to t.org and watch these guys in an interview. The guys that were inside the towers that survived and the firefighters that went to go get them. It's riveting. There's hundreds of stories. I could go on all day. Go to our website, look at those interviews of 9/11, and it will really give you a real good insight of what happened that day from all different perspectives.
Chief LaBarbera, like you said, there's so many stories, so much to talk about. But the one thing that the firefighters and first responders on the ground that day knew was that many of them may not make it through the day, may not survive the day, and yet they still went in to try to save souls and lives.
You hit it on the head. They knew it. It was not good. 10 to 15-story gaping holes in two of the tallest buildings in the world. People jumping out of the upper floors. The first casualty that the FDNY sustained was from a jumper who killed firefighter Daniel Scher from Engine 216 from Brooklyn. Danny was 6'2", 220, a football player, and he was killed instantly. But those guys, those first responders, police officers, firefighters, EMS, going into that lobby, getting their assignments, and going up. Now, let's take a step back. All the elevators were blown out. There was no communications. All the wires were severed. The standpipe, that's the pipe that runs through that building and supplies water to the upper floors with the pumps that pumps the water up there. All blown out. Our communication vehicle that responds to high-rise emergencies was out of service that day. For the fire department, it was a perfect storm. We fight high-rise fires all the time. Our Manhattan units and the units where high-rise buildings are know how to fight high-rise fires. We've never trained on anything of this magnitude, anything. 15-story gaping holes, and we're worried. Our command chiefs that day was the jet fuel. You know, these planes are full of jet fuel, burns at a very high rate, and I could tell you each and every firefighter knew it was not good when they got their assignment in the lobby command post and they made their way up there. But people also have to understand that if those firefighters, police officers, and EMS did not get up into those staircases and free those staircases of the injured, people couldn't get down because of the smoke, the water. People just couldn't do it because of physical exhaustion. They got up into those staircases and they freed them up and they saved thousands of lives. Thousands. They didn't get up into those staircases, it would have been catastrophic. The numbers that we lost would have been much, much greater. Each and every one of those firefighters, as we know, are heroes.
When you think of that day, do you think that because of 9/11, many people came to actually realize what firefighters and police officers and first responders actually do 24/7 to save lives?
That's a great question. There really is. I had to get back to the firehouse sometime that morning. I really forget what time, because we had to organize fire protection for our areas. We had to do something. The days afterwards, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, everybody would just stop and look at us and wave and acknowledge us. Same thing went for the police officers in our EMS. That never happened before. I think it finally came to light. The people of this great city and this great country, not just the firefighters, the police officers of New York City, but throughout this whole country, who give it up 24/7. It was tragedy of immense proportions for our country. But the days after were just unbelievable. There were flags everywhere. There was no party, there's no political party. All the folks were united behind the flag. It was a magnificent feeling. I know every block had a flag. I'm sure that was nationwide. It was a wonderful, wonderful feeling. I think from that point on, I think people have a much greater respect for first responders and obviously our military.
And Chief, not only were there flags all across our country, but people were actually going back to church of all denominations on their knees, asking for the Lord's help.
They sure were. I know I did. I know I spent time in a church in Lower Manhattan that night and the nights afterwards when I was down there. That's what got us through it. Our faith in the good Lord that we're going to turn this thing around and tell the world that we're back up on our feet and we're going to respond to these cowardly attacks. Our faith played a major role in how we responded and how we made that rescue effort for the first 2 weeks, and then it went into recovery. You definitely needed your faith during that terrible, terrible time.
Do you think that 22 years later, a lot of folks have kind of forgotten about 9/11? It's not on their front minds like it was 22 years ago, especially a lot of young people who weren't even alive at the time.
It is being forgotten, especially by the young children or whoever wasn't born. And that's why Tunnels to Towers has started a 9/11 Institute, where we have curriculum for all different grades that it could be taught so that school children of this country know exactly what happened. And we have speakers that go throughout the country, New York City firefighters, that tell the story of what happened on that fateful day. We have a 9/11 mobile exhibit, which is a museum that opens, a truck that opens up to 1,100 square foot museum, where school kids are going through today. And they go through our exhibit all year round, and we teach them what happened. But we just came out with this 9/11 curriculum. Again, go to our website, t2t.org, and find out about that. It's professionally done where the school children know exactly what happened on that fateful day. Too many folks just don't know because they weren't born, and it's up to each and every one of us to make sure that they never forget and they're taught what happened. Go to t2t.org, make a difference, make a contribution, and we're going to get it done. God bless everybody.
God bless you too, Chief LaBarbera. It is an honor to have you with us here on Morning Air. Chief John LaBarbera, retired battalion chief with the Fire Department of New York City and executive board member of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. You can join me and listen on the Relevant Radio app to Morning Air each weekday at 6 to 8 a.m. Central, and thanks for listening.